Vaishnavi.
Yeah, so I'll start, right?
All right. Yes, good.
So
Please go ahead, Ashika.
Okay. So we come to chapter 5, which says about powerful phrases for challenging situations with your boss. So in your career, you will work with many bosses, and because nobody is perfect, you will have good bosses and you will have bad bosses. Okay. Uh, Whether you consider your bosses good or bad, you are going to like some things that they do, and some things you will dislike. Okay, and when something bothers you, you will have to decide whether to ignore their behavior or speak up. Now, it is not the same as you will be doing when you confront your coworker. It will be different because your bosses will have something to do with your increment and your promotion. So you will have to think about how you are going to deal with these different types of bosses. So the general rules when confronting your boss are as follows. Uh, Whenever you are confronting your boss, you should choose your battles. Okay, not everything or not every annoyance is worth addressing. You should consider the severity of the issue. If the issue is very severe, then maybe you should speak up. Otherwise, just ignore. And whenever you approach your boss, you should approach confidently and assertively. You should use a positive and constructive language. You should stay calm regardless of your boss's behavior. And you should always treat your boss with respect. You should clearly state the facts and how they affect you. And it is a good idea to give examples. Try to offer solutions and focus on working together. Now, if the productive conversation is impossible, then you may seek guidance of an elderly. You should always maintain a professional relationship and avoid burning bridges. So these are the tips, basic rules of when you are confronting your boss. Now, the first type of boss is an abusive boss. So there's a scenario in which an employee, Brandon, he is tired of his boss, Matt, because his boss always abuses him. In this instance, Matt publicly criticizes Brandon in front of a customer, which is the tipping point. So, how to deal with such a boss? So, what will Brandon do? So, for what Brandon needs to do is first think and prepare. Consider the reason behind the boss's behavior. Okay, see if he's in a bad mood or what, and rehearse the conversation before you go and speak to the boss. You initiate the conversation by approaching your boss calmly and request a private discussion to address the incident. You acknowledge and explain. You take responsibility for the mistake that you have done, but explain how the boss's behavior made you feel uncomfortable. Tell him that you should have reprimanded me in private instead of talking rudely in front of a customer. Speak about that. Then offer a compromise. You propose a solution by saying that if such issues are discussed privately, or if he could just wait for the customers to leave and then tell him what he did wrong, then it would make you feel better. Clearly state your desired outcome for future interactions. So say that in case this happens again, you would want him to talk to him privately and not just scream at him in front of customers. Now remember that the goal is to address the behavior calmly and professionally. But if the boss is receptive, then a solution can be reached. If it is not, then you should document the abuse and you should seek help from HR if necessary. So this was how to deal with an abusive boss. The second boss that you have to deal with would be a controlling boss. So in this scenario, Jessica works for Sam, who is a controlling boss, and who assigns tasks without asking her if she has finished her earlier task and expects her to handle everything at the same time. So Jessica usually ignores this behavior, but when Sam assigns her a new project on top of her already existing workload, then she decides to address it and speak to her boss. So what she does the following steps. First, she considers the reason for the behavior and plans her conversation. Maybe the boss doesn't know that she already has so much of work, and if that is the case, then what am I going to speak to my boss? Then she would request a meeting and explain her workload to the boss respectfully. Say that these are all the things that I have to do right now, and then she can explain the issue, that which workload needs priority, and avoid bad accusational language with her boss. So she needs to just explain that these are the workload. Now you tell me which is of priority that I should do. Then she can just suggest a solution, like asking her, uh, like telling him that if he could ask her before assigning any jobs, that what do you have to do right now, what all things are you doing, and then if she says that okay, these are the things, and if she doesn't have a big workload, then he could assign her new task. So this agreement should be there between her boss and herself, and get a confirmation. And she should say that she appreciates that he is working with her and she enjoys working with her boss, but she would appreciate cooperation when he decides to give her more work. And by staying positive and focusing on solutions, then she can establish a more collaborative working relationship with her boss. So this was about a controlling boss. The third type of boss that you have to deal with is an egotistical boss. In this scenario, Rachel's team is tired of their boss, Patricia, because whenever there is something good that happens, then Patricia takes credit for the success. But if any failure happens with the project that the team is handling, then Patricia blames the team. So the team is very unhappy about it, and so they talk to Rachel, and Rachel says that okay, I will volunteer to talk to Patricia about this. That it is not fair. So here are the steps that Patricia thinks while dealing with her egoistic boss. So she will consider her boss's personality, and she will plan her conversation before talking to her boss. She will start by acknowledging their perspective and achievements. She will say that, okay, these are the things that were done by the team well, and therefore, when Patricia got accolades for this, the team was also very happy because it was the team job and they received the accolades together. Then she would clearly explain the issue. She would say that there is lack of shared credit and shared blame, and would tell about her feelings and her team's feelings, that they do not feel supported, and whenever something fails, it is the team who has failed, and there is no shared credit or shared uh, view of taking the blame. Then she would suggest a solution, like acknowledging both team and leader contributions, that both the team and the leader work together, and therefore whether they have got accolades or whether they have failed in a project, both should be accepted by the team as well as by the leader. Then for reconciliation, she says that you get confirmation and show appreciation for their willingness to listen. So she would say that I would appreciate if you could just listen to us and think about how we feel when uh, Patricia just takes all the credit by herself. And by remaining professional and focusing on a win-win, then the whole team can improve communication and morale, and therefore they would work in collaboration with each other and not accuse each other. So this was about the three types of bosses.
Thank you, Ashika. I don't know. I personally feel that Rachel did a great job of approaching the boss. sometimes it's not easy because everybody knows that this is an egoistical boss and who would bell the cat. So in this case, I think Rachel was very brave and she approached it well. But I'm not sure how practical it would be. It would also depend a lot on how receptive the boss is. You know, if the boss is receptive to the way she approached the problem, it will work well. If the boss is really very egoistical, I'm not sure. It may even backfire on him.
No,
Right?
but then I think that in a team there would be one person who would be the boss pet, right? So it's a good idea to
I
tell
hope
that
so.
pet to go
Yes, yes.
and talk to the
Yes,
boss.
I hope so too. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Ashika. Meera, may I now request you to share your understanding of the various kinds of bosses we have? Meera, you're not audible.
No, we can't hear you.
Just having a problem with my connection.
Oh,
No
okay.
problem. Please, yeah. Would you like to start, Meera? Hello?
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Meera.
Hello. Hello.
The,
Yeah.
the next type of boss that they're talking with is an incompetent boss. In the particular instance, they have given an example of a person called Jack who works for a family owned business. Now, this person is a senior employee there and was working directly under a manager who was a brother of the owner. Now, when that person retired, he thought he would be promoted. However, the owner decided to get his daughter to manage that particular department. The manager the girl was a fresher out of college and had no experience in that field. And obviously, she was not competent because she had no experience. Now, this person was an experienced person. He was disappointed. However, he decided to cooperate with her. Now, the first thing that she did after looking around was deciding to make it an equitable distribution of work in the department and altered all the activities that people were doing. Now, this upset Jack because she did not discuss with him before reducing his workload. So he decided that he would talk to her and he spoke to her and discussed with her. So she said that she was only trying to even out the workload. So he explained to her how he was upset and how it affected his work because he was a more capable person and able to handle more. And it gave him pleasure to handle more. And also that there were not everybody who was equally capable and they would actually have a problem with their productivity and overall productivity would suffer because of that. And he actually allowed her to see what was actually happening because of her activity. And he told it to her in a very positive way. She also took it positively and said that she would, and as per his suggestion, said that I would connect with you every time before taking any decision in future. He also offered to teach her what the department was doing and what the organization was doing so that she has a better understanding of the technical aspects which she did not have so far. She was also very grateful for it and said that she would sit with him on a regular basis so that she would have a better understanding of the organization and she would also connect with him every time before taking any decision so that the department was also happy, she was also happy and able to learn more. And shortly afterwards, the boss in the sense, the owner decided that he would transfer her out to some other department and also promoted Jack. So in this way, he was also able to gain the trust of his boss for whatever time she was there, and then subsequently he also was promoted. So he was all's well that ends well, so to say. So this is so then this way he was able to resolve it by taking her on board, taking his boss on board, and actually helping her out. So the way to take an incompetent boss on board is not to be upset that the boss is incompetent, but rather by helping out the boss to become more competent, and so helping the organization also in that way, because finally it is your growth which is also at stake at that place. However, if the boss is so incompetent and not able to handle the HR matters the way other bosses are handling, for example, they are going for training or some other exercises are being conducted for others and not for them, it is better to talk it out upfront with the boss. So this is the way of tackling incompetent bosses. Uh, the next boss that they have been speaking about is inconsistent boss. So here they have given an example of Terry, who is having a boss called Greg. And Greg, once on one day, he has appreciated the report that she has created, and the next day, he has berated her for the same report when she has not made any changes at all. So she was really confused and did not know what to do, and she was also upset. However, she did not show her uh, irritation, and she went and spoke to him in a very positive way and told him that, yeah, yesterday you appreciated the same thing, and today you have scolded me for the same thing while there were no changes. And can you tell me why? So then he said, when she confronted him upfront, he said that it was probably because of his bad mood in the morning. So she made him understand that it confuses her when he behaves like that. And next time, and also told him that when you are in a bad mood next time, please don't scold me. He also appreciated where she comes from and said that he would take care to change his behavior in future. Now this, and then she also joked about it and said that next time don't scold me, and passed it off as a joke and went off. Now all this would happen only and be successful only if a person is really comfortable and has gained the trust of the boss. So in case a person is inconsistent, the first thing that the employee needs to do is gain the trust of the boss and become comfortable so that they are able to open up and speak to them. Because if they do not and they try to confront them, they would take it as a personal affront to them. So that would not work out well. So the first thing is to get a better understanding of the boss, and then and then speak to them in a light-hearted way so that they are able to see where they come from, and then but one thing that has to be expected is a person who is inconsistent who will be inconsistent across all people, not just the subordinates, but also bosses and other colleagues. And it is very difficult for them to change their behavior. So if it happens in future again, these the subordinate needs to be prepared for it and needs to keep at it, and explain to them in a very light-hearted way that they need to change the way of approach, and without taking it as a personal affront to them. So this is what he has discussed for an erratic boss. The next one he has talked about is a micromanaging boss. And they have given an example of a lady called Erica, who whose boss Dan is a micromanager, and he has asked her to prepare a report. And when she prepares the report, he keeps on hovering around her and asking her about it again and again. So they have suggested that she has to think first and get a better understanding of the boss, and convey it suitably to the boss. That is, I know you're not trying to get me upset on purpose. However, if you keep on coming around me, I am getting upset, and I know my job well enough. So you don't need to do it. You need to have a better trust in me, and then she also promises that she will get back to him every time that there is something which is happening in the job and keep him updated. And she also asked him to give another some extra activity and a client of his so that she is able to prove herself, so that he is able to get a better trust. And in this way, he also accepted. Now, while this is the solution he has given, I would have probably not, uh, because I have been a boss for a majority of my life. And if some subordinate comes and tells me that you do not trust me enough and I need you to trust me more and also give me more responsibilities, I might probably not take it very well. If I'm not trusting the person enough, there is probably a reason. And if a person comes and confronts me, it might be difficult for me to tell them and hurt them to tell why. So I would not be comfortable with that. It would be better for the person to keep on, being upfront with them and keeping on reporting to the manager, saying I have done this and discussing their steps without telling them that you don't trust. Automatically, the trust will get built. That would be a much easier and better way to go about, rather than poking the boss and saying that you have done this and you shouldn't be doing this. So, in fact, that is what they have written. If you don't feel comfortable talking to your boss, try to show him or her how capable you are. Don't wait for the boss to ask unnecessary questions and take a proactive approach by keeping your boss in the loop about what you are doing. And this should help gain your boss's trust about what you're doing and may lessen the need to micromanage, which is what I agree. Rather than pointing out the fault to the boss, it is better for the to gain the trust of the boss. And so then they have said that you need to check out why the boss is feeling the need to micromanage. Check out your work, whether you are efficient or whether the boss needs to micromanage. And if you can't think, then demonstrate your that you are dependable and keep the boss in the loop. And discuss the problem with the boss if you are not able to make a headway, and then see how you can work out a compromise solution. So this is what they have discussed in terms of micromanager boss. Yeah.
Thank you, Meera. Thank you so much for sharing what you've read through the book. I would now want Vaishnavi, if you could please share your understanding.
The other type of boss is a non-communicative boss. So the passage talks about a sort of communication hurdle between Steve, his team, and their boss, Helen. And it all starts when Steve's team learns about a company merger through other sources, like a third party, which leaves them feeling like they are out of loop and they are frustrated because they are very uninformed about such a major decision. So, firstly, understand the problem. So Helen, who is the non-communicative boss, she is the manager and she has a habit of not keeping her team updated on any news, let alone important company news. So Steve and his colleagues, they feel out of loop and they question Helen's commitment to transparency. And then Steve volunteers to address the issue directly with Helen since nobody else wants to take up the initiative. But he knows that he has to do so in a non attacking sort of a way, or else the manager might get defended and then there won't be any productive conversation. So Steve has a strategic approach. He plans the discussion and runs it through his head, and he prepares a very objective sort of a conversation and he focuses on how Helen's lack of communication has impacted the entire team and their morale. Then he decides to meet up with Helen and to discuss about the merger, and he maintains a positive tone throughout and he has a confident demeanor while talking to her. Then he seeks to understand. So he uses I phrases, and Steve expresses the team's concern as well as his own concern about hearing such an important news unofficially when it should have come out of her mouth. And he focuses on how it made the entire team feel. Now we have to understand Helen's perspective. So Helen reveals that she herself had limited information about the merger, and she justifies not sharing it because of that. Then Steve acknowledges Helen's point, but then he emphasizes firmly that the team felt disrespected because they weren't kept in loop. So Helen understands his point of view and apologizes, and they reach to a sort of conclusion come compromise. And she agrees to share the limited details, whatever details she has, since she herself doesn't know the entire picture. So what Steve did was that he highlighted the actual problem, that was that the team deserves to hear the news directly from the manager and not through unofficial channels. Then he proposes a solution. He uses compromise and I phrases, and he suggests Helen to keep them informed about the merger henceforth, or any news henceforth. Then they reach an agreement. Helen acknowledges the team and agrees to improve her communication skills. And then they reconcile and appreciate. So Steve expresses appreciation for Helen's willingness to keep them updated. And then he also emphasizes the team's interest in the company matters. So it's not just like it's his issue. Then the skills that Steve uses is basically he addressed it straightforward. So proactive communications, since nobody else was ready to stand up. Then he addresses specific issues. So he focuses on the specific instance, that is the merger news, instead of addressing her overall communication style. So instead of being like, you always do this, and then making the other person get all defensive, he addresses that very specific instance. And his approach is very calm and objective, and it leads to a better productive outcome as opposed to, a passive aggressive one. Key takeaways. So when you have a non-communicative boss, don't wait. Since the other people decided to wait it out, nothing improved. So address communication.
We've lost you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I can hear.
Yeah, Nilu, something wrong with your.
Sorry, my bad then. Can you say?
I'm audible, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, you are. Yes, you are.
So the point was that don't wait, address communication issues proactively. Then and focus on specific issues instead of addressing their overall lack of communication. So that was that. The second boss is a passive boss. So the passage talks about Corey and Kate. So Corey deals with his passive boss. Her name is Kate, and also a difficult co-worker, Kelly. So Kelly consistently treats customers poorly, and despite Corey addressing this issue directly with Kelly, the same behavior continues. So Corey is frustrated that Kate, who is the boss, even though she is well liked by everybody, she avoids confrontations and fails to address most of the issues. She feels the need to be liked uh, to be more important than addressing people's issues, and she leaves everything up to the co-workers. So understanding passive bosses. So these people are people pleasers over leaders. So they prioritize being liked over effective leadership. So this leads to conflict aversion. So they don't engage in any sort of conflict, which is important for problem solving. So that is an issue. And also ineffective feedback. So they struggle to provide constructive criticism to others so as to not hurt their feelings and their own image being shattered or hampered. And this leads to unclear expectations of the employees from the boss or whoever is in charge. And they manage through hope rather than clear direction, which also causes employee frustration since they don't have any clear direction in place. So Corey's approach to Kate is basically he plans the entire conversation in his head, and he strategizes how he wants to address the situation. He focuses on the customer's experience and the potential negative impact the Kelly's rude behavior would have on their business. Then he initiates the conversation. He directly expresses his concern to Kate about Kelly's behavior and its consequences. He uses I phrases. He acknowledges Kate's previous attempt to address the issue, but he also emphasizes on its ineffectiveness because Kate was too, she wasn't exactly stern with Kelly, hence the behavior continued. Then he defined the problem. He clarified the problem by explaining how he shouldn't have to handle customer issues, which stem from Kelly's rudeness. He already has a lot on his own plate. Then they reach to compromise and resolution. So due to the lack of confidence in Kate's ability to handle the situation, Corey proposes to be present during the conversation with Kelly. So Kate doesn't want to take a stand. So Corey proposes that he will be present during every single conversation that she has with the customers, so that whenever Kelly is rude, he can step in. So this ensures that there is a clear explanation of the problem, and this allows Kate to basically deliver expectations of the customers, whatever they have. And the key takeaways are direct communication, be clear and assertive in expressing your concern, focus on the impact, highlight the negative consequences of inaction. The thing was that before, when the boss, Kate, she handled the situation, she failed to highlight the consequences, which led to inaction. But Corey addresses the consequence, and therefore, and he also proposes ways to improve the situation. It's not like he just complains, he volunteers to be present throughout the whole situation. So that is a compromise and resolution, and Kate agrees to that. And there's one tip that the author gives: be persistent. Don't be discouraged by initial resistance. The person wants to maintain the image, but be persistent in seeking solution. And if possible, try to put forth solutions that are more feasible to you than the other person. So that was it.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Very well summarized.
Thank
Okay,
you.
the last two bosses that I have to discuss are reactive boss and unethical boss. Okay, in case of a reactive boss, the scenario is that this Valerie, there's a team which is working on their own daily tasks, and the boss suddenly hears of his boss visiting. And suddenly all hell breaks loose, and this boss tells the team that stop doing everything that you're doing, and let's focus on the quarterly report, which was not due anytime soon. So this is the kind of boss who kind of reacts to every situation without thinking it through, without acknowledging the fact that his reactions could hamper team productivity. So in this case, what the author tries to say is that if it happens occasionally, once in a while, it is okay, because to listen to your boss and do what your boss is asking you to do. However, if you see a pattern, and if you see this happening more frequently, then you understand that this is stemming from the boss's reactive nature, and then you have to snip it in the bud. So as a team, you don't have to go with the flow or get pulled into that wild ride of trying to please or do what the boss is asking you to do. So as a team, decide, and then, as has been said multiple times in our conversations here, in the readings, we've understood that it is always better to have a direct, confident approach. So either go as a team. Sometimes going as a team becomes kind of like a mob mentality. So it is appreciated if one person who's more confident, who can communicate well, goes and approaches the boss and tells the boss very directly and confidently how this reactive nature of the boss is hampering the team. And sometimes bosses do not realize that they jumping from one task to the other, how it impacts the others. So once the boss understands this, and then again follow the 5-step process of, understanding, defining the problem, coming to a resolution and reconciliation. So these 5 steps have been repeated over and over again in this book. I think the essence is the author wants us to understand these 5 steps so that we can use them in various scenarios. So basically, the author says use these 5 steps to, have a confident, calm, composed conversation with a reactive boss. The next boss is an unethical boss. Now, these are bosses you have to be very chary of, because if you have an unethical boss, it could also lead you into trouble. So it says that if you have an unethical boss and you know that the boss is doing something which is against the company policy or something that is unethical, how do you deal with it? There are 2 ways. One is to keep quiet. But if you keep quiet, you're part of the process. You're being unethical yourself. So the best way to do it is to bring it to the notice of the HR. So that's one way. Now, the second is when the boss asks you to do something which is unethical or which is against your principles. How do you deal with that? So in that case, you have to be very firm and tell the boss that you would not like to do something like that. In this case, there's the scenario of a boss, of an internal audit happening, and the boss randomly picks up an employee and tells the employee that you create a fake audit report of customer calls, and the employee does not want to do it. And she very clearly tells the boss that she does not want to do it. And if somebody finds out, she's going to get into trouble and her job will be at stake. But the boss is very confident that no one's going to find out about it. So in this case, what do you do? When the boss assures you that you be party to this unethical practice and nothing is going to happen, but you don't know. In future, if something happens, this will be the same boss who will throw you under the bus. So in that case, how do you, deal with the situation? So the author talks about the fact that first, have a direct conversation with the boss and tell him or her that you are not comfortable doing whatever unethical things the boss is asking you to. However, if the boss persists, then you have to put it in writing. Put it in an email stating very clearly that you would not like to do what the boss is asking you to do. And also clearly state what the boss is asking you to do. Once you send an official email, it becomes like a documentation. So an unethical boss will most likely then not tell you to do this because it's documented. And in future, if the boss still insists, then you can forward the same mail to the HR. So with an unethical boss, you have to ensure that you keep all your documentation and evidences with you, because anything that you say verbally cannot be later proven. So keep your communication. So these are the two bosses that I read about. Now we have to move to the last chapter, which pretty much, I think, summarizes the whole text. It talks about how to use the 5-step process. And my understanding of the last chapter was that if there's a conflict, you follow the steps. You not only follow the steps verbally, but also look at the non-verbal language, body language, and come to a resolution. However, there could be a situation in a conflict that you cannot reach a resolution. You do not agree to what is being proposed, and what you propose is not agreeable to the other party. In that case, you mutually agree to disagree and you leave it at that. That's my understanding. Ashika, Vaishnavi, Meera, please add to the last chapter, your understanding.
Also, it has been written over here by the author that negative feedback can be a growth opportunity. Though somebody can criticize you and give you a feedback, you have to take it positively and see how you can improve on the feedback given. And this feedback will help us to identify your blind spots and it will improve communication. It's always important that you listen, analyze, and decide if the feedback is valid. So think about the feedback, how it is valid, and if it is giving you the scope to improve, then work on it.
Thank you, Ashika. Vaishnavi, would you like to add anything to the last chapter? Any discussion
I think it
points?
was pretty much covered.
All right. Thank you so much. Meera, would you like to add something?
No, I think everything seems to be covered. Thanks.
All right. With that, we end our discussions on this book, which has been going on for a very long time. But this has been a huge learning for all of us, how to deal with conflict and how to deal it productively. So thank you, Ashika, for suggesting this book. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. And especially all the different kinds of characters it talks about, the negative Nelly and the person who sends too many emails. So when you go through those descriptions, you can place people in your workplace that actually do that. And when we're talking about bosses, you can identify traits in yourself, probably, hopefully not, but in other people around you or in smaller teams when you see people leading. So I think this is a fantastic book. Great learnings. Thank you, Ashika.
Yeah, especially the boss who is a people pleaser, who is a passive boss who doesn't take decisions. So I feel that as a leader, you cannot sit on the fence. Okay, you have to do it. you have to be black or white. You cannot be gray, because then it gives mixed, communication, or what do you say?
Absolutely.
Uh, feedback to the people who work for you. Because then you are not certain. So then how will people take decisions, right? So when you are a leader, if you have to say something uh, bad about things not happening, it's a good idea to speak about it than just brush it under the carpet.
Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree with it. And in fact, there are some very sticky situations that you come across when you are a leader, and not dealing with that situation is not an option. Because then by doing that, you're only brushing it under the carpet. It will come out in a very big way, maybe sometime later. So yes, taking accountability and pulling the bull with by the horns when is required needs to be done. You may not be I think when bosses try to be popular bosses by trying to be people pleasers, it doesn't work in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah,
All right,
thank you.
great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, I will
Thank you.
just stop the recording.